There's definitely a push to get me my first goal. We had a couple set pieces designed just for me. It just never happens. And easily in St. Louis against Ireland, that second game was the closest I've ever been to scoring on a set piece designed for myself. I mean, it would have been too good to be true.
It's Rog. Delighted to be here with our very first episode of Road to the Cup Season 2. And we'll do it all in the company of one of my favourite people in football. Honestly, that's actually an understatement. One of my favourite human beings in the entire world. From your Portland Thorns, the greatest Rebecca since, dare I say, the biblical matriarch herself. A true American footballing hero. Wahoo wah to US Women's National Team captain, Becky Sauerbrunn.
Oh, Raj, what an opener. I'm touched. I'm actually so much attention makes me feel funny, and I'm feeling funny right now.
We pod, fresh off a lovely moment. You celebrated the truly immense achievement, bloody incredible achievement. You become one of 13 people in our nation's history to break the 200 cap mark. And I've got to say, Becky, watching you on the field, pre-game with your family in your hometown, St. Louis, the pride of Ladue, Missouri. What feelings, what thoughts went through your mind in that moment?
Yeah, I wasn't even sure I wanted to have a 200 cap celly. As you know, I lost my dad earlier this year. So it was something I was like, I don't really know if I want the attention right now. And then someone reminded me that it's not really about you for these celebrations. It's really about all the people that had a role in guiding me to that moment. So when I stepped out onto the field, I was thrilled that, my mom was there with the flowers and Zola was there and my brothers and some nieces and nephews. And even my club coaches made it out onto the field. And I was like, guys, how did you even make it down here? They're like, I don't know. We just followed everyone else. So I had quite the entourage. And, I was worried that it was going to be too emotional for me. And really, I could not stop smiling because I know my dad would have gotten a kick out of the whole day. And so, honestly, the whole day was just wonderful.
You broke the 200 cap mark during the pandemic because you've actually won 216 US caps by now, which, by my math, is exactly 216 more than me. But you and I have both scored exactly the same number of goals as each other. Who would figure that? Zero.
Who would have figured it? Yeah, there's definitely a push to get me my first goal. We had a couple set pieces designed just for me. And it's so funny because they've sprinkled those in throughout the years to try to get me a goal. And they just never come off. It just never happens. And easily in St. Louis against Ireland, that second game was the closest I've ever been to scoring on a set piece designed for myself. I mean, it would have been too good to be true.
We are just 98 days from the World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. And I wonder, how much is that World Cup on your mind right now? Is there a countdown clock somewhere in the Sauerbrunn residence near the cat litter, perhaps?
I mean, it's everywhere. Even when we're in camp, they always like to put up slides at the welcome meeting that's like, this many games left, this many training sessions, this many meetings. And so we're reminded of it a lot. And I think that's good because you need to feel that pressure now. So you start getting used to being uncomfortable about it, because it is a stressful thing preparing for a World Cup. And the more that you can get settled with those uncomfortable feelings, the better off you're going to be for it.
You're all teammates. You're all good friends. There's great vibe, but you're all working ultimately together to win. But on another level, many of you are competing against each other to be on that squad for starting spots, for playing time, for roles. Can you describe the strange tension that can create?
Yes, and I have been through that tension a few times now, so I kind of know what to expect, and I can kind of feel it coming on when the year starts. And it's just unsettling. And, you're fighting for spots, you're fighting for roles, and you go into training and you're reading too much into the breakdown of this training session or that scrimmage. And, so you're just overanalyzing everything, and you're just like, why am I doing this to myself? But it happens every single time. And, people go into tackles a little bit harder, so everyone's trying to show their stuff. And so, maybe some people take a shot that they shouldn't shoot. And it's an interesting time. And then you always have to, the veterans that have been through it, kind of bring it back and remind everyone that it's team first. And yes, you want to show your stuff, but the way you're going to make it onto the World Cup roster is if you're a good teammate and you're willing to do all the work, not just the fancy stuff, not just, the assists, the goals. It's the ones that are willing to do the track back running or the slide tackle to block a cross, like these little things that don't really get celebrated. Sometimes people forget that that's going to put you on the World Cup roster. So it's reminding people you need to do all of it.
For you personally, Becky, this is what's incredible. You are on the cusp of your 4th World Cup. I mean, incredible. It's incredible. You've won 2. Does it feel different this time? Does it feel like more pressure? Does it feel less pressure? Adjusted priorities? Adjusted excitement levels? Or do you just have a set World Cup mindset that you just lock into each and every time in a groove?
I think each and every time I have been the same amount of a stress ball that I am currently right now. I try to keep a great perspective on it, and so grateful that I could potentially be going to my 4th, because to me that's like unreal. If you told 13-year-old Becky that she was going to get to go to 4 World Cups, she would never have believed it. And so the pressure to me is the same, while also maybe having an adjusted perspective in that I really want these younger players to know what it feels like to win a World Cup. And because it's so cool. It's hard to put words to it, but it really is such an amazing experience. And so we have a very young squad, and I love that about us. And so I want them to experience that.
We see you as the leader, the warrior on and off the field now, but you were immensely shy off the field as a kid. But also on the field, you were so much bloody afraid. There's a story that I love. You scored a goal at 8 years old, whole team swarming around you, celebrating as if you just won the World Cup. And you've said that moment, that attention from your peers, really became an inception point for your love of the game. Can you talk about that moment? Because such a surprising story for anyone that watches you on the field. But it also links to your kind of pathway in your career of modestly shirking personal glory.
Yeah, and I didn't really have a word for it when I was younger, but I'm definitely introverted, and it started from a young age, and attention for me has always been, it makes me feel weird. And something about being on the field really made me feel free and connected, and to this day, it's still kind of a surprise when people like celebrate me on the field or off the field. And so for whatever reason, those moments like that where you score a goal or you do something great and people come up to you and, I think I probably cried, because the attention was just overwhelming. But it is, those pivotal moments that really like cement your passion for something. And those are the moments for me where I was like, I love this. This is so great.
We know St. Louis, you've said it, it's one of the great oases of football in our nation. Also one of the great oases of indoor soccer. City had 2 professional indoor teams when you were growing up. Because indoor soccer is such a different creature than grass football. Do you think that indoor background affected your style of play as you were developing in those formative years?
Oh, I think it very much has guided my soccer style, even to this day, having not really played indoor soccer for more than just, pick up or for fun. But it is such a different game. Obviously you've got the boards, but you've got less players. So much of it is like close range passing or movement off the ball. And of course you need those things on, Lebanon side. But it's just so much more sharper and dynamic on the indoor game. And so it's funny for me, when I first started playing outdoors, I could not hit a long ball. I probably couldn't hit a long ball properly through college. Because I remember Steve Swanson at UVA being like, all right, we're going to have some individuals because you cannot strike this ball right. I'm like, yeah, I know. So I was great, like short range passing, but like asked me to hit a long ball, wasn't going to happen. So in a way, so I will blame that. But I also think that because of indoor soccer, I can solve things a little bit faster. I see angles a little bit quicker. And for me, I think that fits my style of play. I'm definitely more analytical than I am, reactionary.
That groundbreaking 1999 World Cup, you were just 14 years old. That pivotal moment in the history of the women's game. I couldn't love the serendipity of this more. You, young Becky Sauerbrunn, were actually there in the packed crowd at Soldier Field in Chicago. You watched the US demolish Nigeria 7-1 in that group stage. What do you remember about that day? What feelings have stuck with you sitting in that 65,000 capacity sold out stadium watching that legendary US team?
First thing I remember, how freaking hot it was. It was so hot. And we were on like the upper tier, very, very high up. But what I do remember is watching Carla Overbeck in the middle of the defense and just her like sheer command of the back line. And you could see her like barking orders to people, running the line. And as someone who had just recently kind of found my place as a defender and a center back, I was just like spellbound. I was like, this chick is badass. I am absolutely going to try to style my game after her, because you could just see it. It was like palpable.
14-year-old Becky was living in a world before professional women's club football. The national team was the end all and be all really of what you could achieve as a female footballer in the United States in the 20th century. And I'm curious, watching these 99ers at age 14, you just started moving up the ladder of the youth national system. What even felt possible to you at the time as an end goal?
I mean, at the time, to be honest, every time I got invited into a youth national camp or a regional camp, I was like, oh, wow, like this is amazing. Like, take it for what it is. This is a gift. And I thought, if everything was to work out perfectly, like I would kind of just go up the ladder. I'd play for the 14s, the 16s, the 17s, the 19s, the 21s, and I was very fortunate that that's pretty much how my trajectory went. I always had in the back of my mind, the senior national team. Like, obviously, like that's the goal. But to me, it very much was like, that's the dream. And it was, goals are achievable. Dreams are sometimes achievable, but not always. And so I had hopes, but I also just felt like I don't think I have it to get to that level.
We sit here 2 games into the NWSL season. You and your mighty Portland Thorns are only defending champions after taking home the 2022 NWSL Championship back in October. And I loved the pictures, the photographs, the video of your teammate Megan Klingenberg puffing on a victory cigar like a Yinzer, Carlo Ancelotti, 17-year-old Olivia Moultrie, frankly looking terrified in the background of every photograph as like Budweisers were just cracked and slung. But we haven't had you on the pod since then, Becky. Catch us up. How did you celebrate that championship?
Oh, it was a tough year to be an NWSL player. And then when you then add that I was on the Portland Thorns with all the things that have been happening with the Thorns over the past years and how much the players have had to handle a lot of that and navigate that, I don't think anyone would have expected for us to win the championship. And I don't know if that galvanized us a little bit, but we definitely came together and found a form of play where we were really kind of highlighting each other's strengths and minimizing our weaknesses. And we were all like loving being around each other. And, a lot of people say that, and I've been a part of a lot of teams, but something about, the players in the Thorns, it's just a genuinely like good environment. And there's always, rough times and good times, but we enjoyed being around each other. And so winning that championship was awesome. And we celebrated super hard. As you talked about, there were stogies, a lot of beers, there's champagne. There was Liv standing awkwardly on the side of the locker room, which is fine. My introversion hit halfway through, so I also was standing awkwardly away from the crowd for a little bit. You just celebrate the way you need to celebrate. But it was great, and the reception from the city when we came back was awesome as well. So it was on the field. It was a good year, and then obviously still off-field matters that we need to take care of.
This NWSL season is something of a surreal one. A World Cup plonked right down in the middle of it. That's got to change your approach mentally. Is there a point in the season where players start to have more than one eye on the World Cup and the World Cup only?
I think that is very individual. I think some players, when they're with their professional teams, are all about their professional teams. Some are always kind of like, okay, my eye is with the national team. Like, that's my goal. So I'm using this environment. I'm going to do my best, but my hope is that I'll be on the national team. So it's really individual. For me, I think I appreciate the NWSL so much that it would be a disservice to my teammates on the Thorns and to the NWSL to not give my all. And when I'm with the Thorns, I'm with the Thorns. And then when I'm with the national team, I'm with the national team. And I will always just try to give my best. And I know like it gets a little scary, you know, the few games left right before the World Cup. You want to stay healthy, but you still want to play well. And so it's an interesting time because, you know, you're like, should I go into that slide tackle? Should I jump out of it? And those are the times when you actually get in the most trouble. You should just go through it. So just go through the tackle. Just don't jump out of it. But it's an interesting time. And also this World Cup is about a month later than it usually is. So in the past, I've played maybe 2 or 3 games with my club team before I go off for international duty. And this go around, it's like 10 or 12 games. And so your professional play is instrumental to your preparation for the World Cup, but also for making the roster. And so these players, like you said earlier, that are fighting for these spots, like we have to ball out these next 8-10 games. Cause like, this is it. Like we're done with international duty until that roster is announced. And so this is your time to shine.
Yeah, we saw and heard the Canadians battle their own federation during the She Believes tournament in February. That's ongoing. We've seen the French and the Spanish fight their own grinding conflicts with their own associations and more and more and more. This World Cup, it's undoubtedly going to be the most highly competed on the field. But does it feel like it's one that's going to have to be watched almost through dual lenses, marvelling at the play, but retaining another eye on the roiling turmoil between the players and their different battles for safety, for equality and respect of it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it would be a disservice to us if you didn't see it both ways, because we are who we are because of the battles that we've gone through and that we continue to go through. And the women's team, my team for the first time, will be going in without a huge barrier in pay equality. Of course, there are other things that we're always going to use our platform for, but you know, going into 2019, that was pretty much a huge talking point, is if we could do this, be successful on the field while also fighting for pay equality. And we did do that. And for these federations and these teams that are going into 2023, like this is a platform that they absolutely can and should use to show their fight and their collective strength in fighting for stuff that they believe in, whether it's pay or working conditions or even just safety, you know, for health and body. Each federation is going through something. Each women's team is going through something. And so individually and then collectively all together, I hope that 2023 becomes so much of a launching point of talk around how amazing the women are on the field, but also off the field.
Would 14-year-old Becky have believed if you went back in time now and said, don't worry, Shy One, you will grow up to be a World Cup winner and you'll be a change-making captain of your nation, what would she have said to you?
And in a way, like I would not want to have known the end or the trajectory of my career at that age, because that would have completely changed my approach to everything. And as I've gotten into the twilight of my career, being able to look at my journey and how I did struggle with confidence, and I still struggle at times. And I wasn't sure if I was ever going to make the national team, and now to be around for 216 caps, like I needed those struggles, I think, to get to where I am today. And so I'm glad I didn't know it was going to be like this.
Becky Sauerbrunn, find joy in that. Out of this podcast, I do believe we will create the Zen of Becky Sauerbrunn, the Tao of Becky Sauerbrunn. You are the single greatest. Godspeed to you, your Portland Thorns, and your US women's national team. Thank you for your time, your wisdom, your passion. It's incredible joy to be with you.
Thanks, Raj.
Big love and courage. Subscribe here for more Men in Blazers videos and courage.